Hi, my name is Shannon Garrido, and this is Diego Santos, and this is Let's Talk. Today we're going to talk about who are the real heroes of 2020.
Yes, for us, as we were speaking earlier, I think nurses and doctors are definitely the primary heroes of 2020 because of obviously the pandemic that we're suffering right now. We think that even though people have rallied around them and given them some recognition in some countries, rounds of applause at a certain hour or something, and everyone says that they are now more appreciative of the work that doctors and nurses do. We think that on the part of government and policy making decisions, doctors are not taken into account and nurses are not recognized fully as the ones that are in the front line working against this virus that is affecting
Exactly.
humankind.
And how this came into fruition is because there is a magazine we all know, Time Magazine, who recently named Biden and Kamala Harris Person of the Year. And obviously, for obvious reasons, it makes sense. They are in the limelight. They are recognized by everyone. They are now, president and vice president-elect. But when we really think about who deserves recognition in 2020, who should be, called out as important members of society, I think we can all agree that frontline workers such as doctors and nurses and medical professionals, those who help us get tested, those who take care of us when we're sick, those who make space for us when there isn't any space, they should be, and Time Magazine did, give them their space, and, they uploaded 6 stories of medical professionals who, have stories to tell on their time working during this pandemic. I think it's important to recognize that stories is just not enough. There needs to be action taken by, as you said, policymakers
Better
and legislators.
salaries, better working conditions.
Exactly. They should be considered essential workers, because if that's what we're going to name them, why don't we pay them as such? Why don't we, care for them as such? We were also talking about how small businesses should be named.
Also, heroes of this pandemic. They really kept the economy moving in spite of tremendous pressure, both from the economic situation, given that many people lost their jobs and not enough money was circulating, and also big corporations who got richer and actually benefited from this pandemic. Amazon comes to mind, for example, and many small businesses have survived against the tide in this very harsh months. And also, again, there has been a severe lack of even compassion from policymakers in this respect. They have not been given any help, any significant help at least. And it's been really, really harsh.
And it shows as well. Not only have they not been given significant help, it's very prevalent. I mean, in developing countries such as the United States, and in underdeveloped and in under or developing countries such as ours, here in the Dominican Republic, we see how small businesses have had to work the tide incredibly hard. They have lost revenues. Many have closed down. Many have lost employees, to the point where unemployment is at an all-time high, and it is due to the fact that policymakers and our current economic system comes to mind as well, that it just works against entrepreneurship. It works against economic mobility, because unless you work for multi-million-dollar corporations that benefit off of needing to sell everything at cheap and at large and at bulk, it is difficult for small businesses to make it out alive. So they definitely should be considered heroes of 2020, because without them, we wouldn't be able to.
And I would like to add that they should be taken seriously into account when designing the rebound of the economy in the next years.
Yes.
The small businesses really have a multiplier effect of wealth. And if they're not taken into account, we will just be attending to the increase of inequality in every possible way in the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, I think it's impossible to have this conversation without talking about the large levels of inequality within all of these essential workers and who the real heroes of 2020 have had to indulge. Because as we were talking about nurses, many stories come to mind. A recent one of a young lady who is a working medical professional who made her income elsewhere and was fired because of so. There's really no need to go into detail, but it just proves to show that not only are they not paid enough to, make a decent salary, make rent in a country that average rent is like $1,400, but that they're fired because of so. And it comes to mind because if we're going to really think about who the real heroes of 2020 are, we should also understand how we've done them wrong, I feel like.
That's for me also the most important thing. We need to change the way that we approach this people, which their work was not recognized enough, I think, because before this month. And now we're seeing how essential they are and how mistreated they are by our society and by our economic system.
Yeah.
And I think it's not just an opportunity to reflect on that, but to act on it.
Yeah, because many of them stated, and even I'm pretty sure it's been stated by Time Magazine that many of them, they did sign an oath to care for the sick and for the needy.
Yes, but
they
shouldn't
didn't
come at their personal expense.
Yeah, but they didn't sign the price that their family should suffer as well and should get sick as well. So it's definitely 2021 should be a year of compassion and empathy, where we understand, the position that we've put so many people in.
And it's not just compassion, I think. It's also looking for the best interest of the society as a whole. It's not logical to think that we can go on with a weak healthcare system.
Yeah.
It's not. This year is a proof of that. It affects not only health of individual people, but society as a whole, and thus the economy.
Yeah.
So it's not only compassion and goodwill, because that sounds really nice, but it's sometimes deemed as I think idealist or whatever. It's also economically wise to give value to what really has value.
Exactly. Not only speaking of things that have value that are never given the recognition that they deserve, and as students, I think we can attest to being perpetrators of this. And another hero of 2020 would be teachers.
Of course.
Teachers have held a difficult front line, not only because they've had to change every way in which they teach, but they've had to deal with so much scrutiny, not only in the public eye, but in their own jobs. Many of them have
think unprecedented scrutiny for teachers.
Yeah,
Yes.
because we all know that students have had to suffer a very different wave, of course, but teachers are the ones that are holding this whole, all educational systems at place. They're kind of holding the front line. And
they've had to, in a way, reinvent themselves to adapt to this new reality and try to give what they give every day, knowledge to students in a whole different way that many of them weren't even technologically savvy before this, and now they are forced to work through that way.
Many of which who are forced to buy their own equipment. We've seen this in many countries, the teachers are just not only paid very, very little, but are forced to buy their own equipment to teach their own classes, buy their own books, buy their own,
Such as the students also that have been forced to, in many cases to.
So during this pandemic, having to not only suffer financially, but it takes a toll on teachers to not be able to teach properly, if that makes any sense. And as we've been saying this whole time, not only do we have to obviously express compassion and understanding and empathy towards these essential workers and towards the real heroes of 2020, we also need to take action. We need to take action in making their lives better, in making their jobs easier, in order for us to benefit in the future, because we are going to have to live with this pandemic. And if we don't educate kids properly, what is the next generation of workers going to look like?
And again, it comes to economics.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds really nice to give value to the teachers because they're very good and they give what they have and they're so selfless. But it's also economically intelligent because what's the next generation of workforce going to look?
Exactly.
We need an educated workforce to have the level of life that we are accustomed to.
Exactly. By recognizing real heroes of 2020, which is what the segment is about, not only do we, we give a voice to those who, for a long time, not only did they feel voiceless, but their voice was midgeted to social justice warriors that didn't really do much for them. But we're also trying to explain how important it is that we take them into consideration because, at our core as a society, what we most need is entrepreneurship, okay? It's health workers and it's teachers. That's kind of how the cycle goes. You teach, people make something out of it, and others heal. That's kind of how society has been built at its core. And to just ignore that and midgetate that,
I think we've taken it for granted.
Yeah, and take it for granted. It's not smart. It's not smart for whatever the future of the country, of any country might be, what the future of the world will look like, after this pandemic or while this pandemic heals. We really do need to take into consideration the people that have made, 2020 livable and that have, put us through. To finalize, I think we need to reiterate that, yes, Time Magazine did name Joe Biden and Kamala Harris as Person of the Year. And while it might be understandable, I don't think it's right for many reasons and that we have just mentioned. But the most important one being that the real heroes of 2020 have been ignored for far too long and shouldn't be, in order for us to preserve what should be preserved and perfect what should be perfected.
And to really come to a better world in the future.
It really is not simple, but it sounds simple if you really think about it.
Yes.
Yeah.
You just have to give value to what has value.
Exactly.
And pick better politicians, I would say.
And with that, this was Let's Talk. I'm Shannon Garrido, and this is Diego Santos.